Hey everyone, you know what's up, another Friday, another live stream coming at you from the shop. This beautiful Hellcat doing our level 1.5 upper injectors, thermostat, true flex fuel, all of it. Of the beauty of the availability of 93 with the power from E85, the safety of the true flex fuel, bleeding boost, as we've shown in previous episodes. Arturo getting his hands dirty. Not really with those gloves, but gotta keep those hands clean. So, JLT on this one as well. We are a dealer for them, as well as 20,000 other parts. So if you need anything for your ride, hit us up. We probably got you. So, little two-tone on it as well. Kind of liking it. Kind of falling for it, the little two-tone. So, not something to see all too often. Show you this side under Jeff's car. So, yeah, she's a pretty one. So, see what John's working on. I see some Eibach boxes. We got Eibach Pro Line front and rear lowering springs. Eibach sway bars. Makes a huge difference in how these boats handle. I know they're big, I know they're heavy, I know they're fat. They don't like to turn. This does make a huge difference. I did a Petters 95 mil adjustable front sway bar on my 300. It is night and day. It is such a huge improvement from such a little part that doesn't really take too much time to install. All of my cars have them. I love them. So just something you can do if you running out of things to modify. There's always something else. Hey, Chris. How you doing? Let's see. So John just getting the heat shields back on her. Gonna wipe her down. Keep her clean. Let's see what else we got. Still waiting on parts. The old dealership struggle. So they should be here shortly. Shouldn't be too much longer. So motor swap continues on this Trackhawk. Motor is off. We're gonna probably clean the subframe, swap everything over. This one's also waiting on some parts in the dealership. What were we waiting on? Timing cover, water pump, some other things. We're already in it. Truck has higher mileage, so rather than go back in with an older water pump, older gaskets, the customer opted to replace them. So we will do that. That way, when he comes back with the extra power, he has the added reliability of newer components that he doesn't have to worry about failing. So, if we're doing a engine rebuild, anything like that for y'all, and you want extra stuff done, just let us know. We can probably assist and probably accommodate. So, anything is possible. I have some flooring here, actually some interior walls for our new office. We're progressing on that, getting her all spiffied up. Now that we have increased staff, we definitely need that extra office space. So it is crucial. Got a little Camaro on the dyno, nothing too crazy. Just some bolt-ons, little 2-liter. I'm real fond of the GM 4-cylinders. I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I love them. I see the viewer count dropping, though, so we will turn away. Final safety checks on it, bleeding coolant, so she'll be hitting the track soon. But, yeah, that's just about where we are. This one was a Pro-Charged car. Just some of the realities of supposedly bolt-on kits is the intercooler brackets were not correct for it, so we had to pull them off, send the intercooler back to ProCharger for a replacement. But as soon as that's back, it should be suited and booted. We got the ProCharger head unit. Just about see her up in there. So, yes, Jeff, that is a purple Charger you see. We got CJ over there, but yeah, look at her up there, inside on a lift, ready to make some power. I often hear that the purple cars are faster, so we're going to have to put that theory to the test. But I subscribe to it. I believe it. I'm going to paint my Crow purple. I want to go fast. So, Jeff, don't talk about Chevys. I'll put a Sonic on the screen so fast. So let's go find Jeremy. Let's sit down. Let's talk about this week's discussion. Also, real quick, I want to show you something. Ooh! Ooh, look at this. Look at this. Intake manifold. 3D printed. Part of it. We are making progress. We are serious about this stuff, y'all. Light, affordable intake manifolds. So we're going to have them for 5.7, 6.4, 6.1, 6.2 cars. Yeah, I mean, this is something exciting. I'm probably going to try and get one for my Magnum and be able to do a long-term test on it, but I'm really excited to see this. Nice, thick, big, beefy unit, but still lightweight because it's plastic. You gotta love it. So, map sensor holes, bungs for pressure. So, this is serious, y'all. This is serious. Hey, Mike, glad you can make it. Let's go sit in with Jeremy, get situated. You ready? All right. Let's get situated, y'all. All right. Sit there. Oh, I am loud.
Okay. What's going on, everybody? All right, there he is.
Hey, y'all.
So, went over a little shop tour now. We're going to get into... Oh, watch this guy.
We have a window now, Joe. Come on.
All right. So, the subject at hand today. Should you modify a high-mileage vehicle?
I've been through it.
The reason I bring this up is that, what we're seeing more and more now is, these vehicles aren't brand new anymore. We're having vehicles dating back over a decade old. So the mentality, and it's one of those things. It can be whether somebody really wanted one, when they didn't have the opportunity to mod it back then, or they've had it for a while, paid off, and there's no warranty, whatever the case may be. We're seeing a lot more high mileage vehicles wanting to come in, whether it's higher mileage, just the pure date of the vehicle. So we're going to go over what you have to expect as a customer when you go to modify a high mileage vehicle. The other thing we are noticing is it's not what we call virgin cars anymore. Some of these cars were owned by somebody else, or other shops modded them and you're ready to take it to the next level. So there's a lot of what we're seeing, and it's becoming more and more common, and it's not really talked about. So this is really a deep look into what we do see when it comes to our customers and expectations, and really hopefully will guide others down a path that's beneficial for the vehicle they have and what to expect. So it's really a big title of, could you, should you? Now you absolutely can. It's your vehicle. You do whatever you want. Now really diving into the should you, what you need to understand is that these vehicles were not made for massive power increases. They were designed and engineered for the way that they work. So we're going to start there. So we'll use a 2006 SRT vehicle, whether it's a Jeep, a Charger, whatever it may be, right? So they're 425 crank horsepower, and then you're going to double that horsepower. Mm-hmm. Nothing on that vehicle is designed for it, let alone, if we're referencing a 2006, we are now approaching 18 years old for that vehicle. So you have to understand, nothing on that vehicle is designed for that power output, from the torque, the vibration, everything. And now you have components that have mileage. Even low mileage vehicles that are older will have issues because rubber doesn't just stay refined its whole life, right? Rubber wears, dry rot. Over time, it just will wear out. That's why bushings have to be replaced, suspension parts have to be replaced, and all those components. Radiator hoses, belts, everything. One of the big things we're seeing now is wiring harnesses and wires. You got to realize that those wiring harnesses are locked in place the way they are with copper little tiny wires that have had currents flying over them, seeing temperature variances and things like that. Well, you drop an engine with a harness on it, you move it around, lay it on a table, move it back, it's possible that you might have something just slightly fall apart, or corrosion. We're finding a ton of vehicles with corrosion in wires. We have a nightmare car right now. We just started cutting the insulation back, and the harnesses, the wires are just completely corroded. Mm-hmm. And you can't get the harness for it anymore. It's a 2006 Jeep. What do you do, right? So these are things you have to start to understand. We've had cars come in with literally rotted and rusted subframes when we drop it down to do a cam install. There's holes in the subframes. There is a lot you don't know until you do take it apart. It is not the shop's responsibility to, kind of, in a sense, go through and, if you reach out to them and go, hey, I want to add 200 horsepower, no problem. You have to understand, have a little bit of common sense that, hey, there are other things I might have to address. We do that on new vehicles, let alone something that's approaching 2 decades old. So just in the past couple months, we've seen dry rotted subframes. We've seen harnesses completely destroyed from corrosion and wear and tear. We've seen potential radiator hoses that have failed over time. You double the horsepower on it, and it's fine in our possession. And it's one of those, if it's not broke, don't fix it normally, is kind of how you approach things, right? But when it comes to those, it's very hard to do a full inspection on and really know the true condition of them until, things happen. Suspension bushings just completely worn out. And you're going to start noticing this on, Hellcats were newer for a very long time. I mean, we are now starting to approach the 10-year mark for Hellcats being out. So, the prices on them are dropping. They're becoming more affordable for a lot of other people. You have to understand and be ready. We had a Hellcat in here that had 60, 70,000 miles on it. Spark plugs destroyed. I couldn't even do a dyno pull. And then in the process of blowing apart, we noticed coils were bad. Again, this will continue to snowball, and you have to be ready. And that was a simple level 1 package. So these are things you have to be ready for, and understand that as shops, when we're consulting with you and working with you, we're going to give you what is needed for what you're requesting. We can go through on every build and replace everything that's on it, but then people complain about the price. I'm just being real, is what it is. But radiators going bad. We had a car come in. What year is it?
14.
14?
It was low miles, like
super
50,
low miles.
It's clean.
Cleaner
it's
than
clean.
most of the cars in here. It is one of the cleanest cars. Getting in the air to put a Pro Charger on it, radiator's leaking. It's just one of those things you have to be ready for. Naturally, if you double the horsepower and everything, you need to have these expectations in place. But as things get dated, even if you take care of something, you are going to start doing cover weaklings. We have a car here where another shop worked on it, messed with the wiring on it, and as driving, it's completely destroyed. It just wore out over time. Their connections were bad, and it's one of those things where you're going to start to really have to face the cost of any type of upgrades or repairs versus what the potential result is going to be. Sadly, this market in regards to the Gen 3 Hemi and the Mopars doesn't have the same support as the GM world or even the Ford world, right? So they're starting to get there. We're starting to see it come through. But I have a customer that's facing whether we have to try and source a new wiring harness and potentially PCM, or is he going to go to a Holly, right? So these are things you do have to start to think about when you approach it. We here have a rule that if a vehicle has over 75,000 miles, my sales guys have to come to me and consult with me to see if we'll even touch it. And the reason for it is the unknowns of what we're going to find, right? For example, drop-in pistons, we don't do it with a lot of miles on it because you don't know the wear and tear inside of an engine leading up to that point. So you get a perfectly round piston going into a bore that's opened up, you're going to have a lot of blow-bys. So, we have these regulations and these protocols in place because we want to, preserve the customer experience. We don't just want to say yes just to take a job in. We would rather say no and preserve that relationship and really help people understand what they can get into. I understand, you can go pick up a 150,000 mile cheap, cop car, retired cop car, and then you want to modify it, go for it, but be ready for the continued maintenance that is needed for any type of high performance build.
Absolutely.
And when we say high performance, 200 horsepower on top of a stock horsepower rating is considered high performance. I mean, that's a lot of horsepower to add. So you have to be ready and understand what is going on over the years. The worst thing for a vehicle is having it sit. Honestly, it's better to drive a car. So you get those low-mile vehicles where, it's been garage kept, it drives 3 months out of the year, it's only 20,000 miles, but it's almost 20 years old. Those usually have more problems than the cars that have 100,000 miles on them, that see the movement and the actual cycles that it needs to be put through. So these are things you need to consider and understand going into it when you're talking to these shops. You can't be upset when we come at you with a price, we might do it, right? I'll be honest, we do increase the price for a high-mile vehicle. Why? A rusty bolt doesn't come out as easy as a 10,000-mile vehicle that is only 3 years old.
No.
It's just the way it goes. The risk of a bolt breaking, and then we have to go and remove it. We schedule our time on what the average is that it will take to complete a job. When you throw in these variables, it's not fair to a business to eat and absorb the cost on it just to get a job. You know what I'm saying? It's not worth it for us to, and again, it's preserving that quality. We've seen it, drop in subframe bolts break, right?
Yeah.
Literally the list goes on, and the reason why we're addressing this is more recently we're seeing more and more of the issues here. You cannot get mad at your shop due to the miles or condition of your vehicle prior to it being there.
Right.
I had a vehicle that we built it, request was 900 wheel horsepower, had a blower on it already. they had a built trans in it. Picked it up, put a couple 100 miles on it to break the motor in, did a smack on it, snapped the input shaft on the transmission. It was a built trans, but the trans builder decided to use a stock input shaft. We were told it was the poor craftsmanship of my tune and it had too much timing in it.
Yep.
Okay? The reality is, it's known in the NAG 1s that stock input shafts do not like power. So when you have a goal of 900 horsepower, you should address those concerns correctly when building it. We didn't build the trans, we weren't paid to build the trans, we were told it had a built trans. But it snapped the input shaft. And then, the vehicle is a 2012, so where are we at? We're, 12 years old now, right? So we go ahead, send the trans off, they warranty it, the trans company said that, won't use names or anything. Put it back in, go to start the car, starter doesn't work, right? It is an OEM starter that's 12 years old. Rusty, corroded, I mean, it doesn't work. Typical trick, we put a pry bar on it, tapped it, tried to see if we could knock the solenoid loose, took it out, bench tested it, it's fried, right? Completely gone. We were told we had to warranty it that we damaged the 12-year-old starter.
How?
Exactly. It's just the nature of the beast. Being removed a couple times, it's just worn out. You know what I mean? Put a new starter in, it started right up. It's just the nature of what it is, okay? So you got to understand that sometimes going in, and like I said, when you move things that haven't been moved in a very long time, stuff happens. And you got to just have an understanding with the shop that they're going in and doing that for you. And people are going to sit there and be upset about it, maybe a higher price. Well, it allows us to take our time more and make sure that these items are, addressed accordingly. Rushing, doing something quicker to drop the price, allows for these things to be damaged in the process easier, right? If you're rushing to try and get bolt time to hit that book time, or throwing wires around to try and really hit that target that you booked a customer, and then other things happen, and then customers get upset with us at that point.
Right.
You got to understand, shops here to support their families, right? It's one of those, we have skill set and the knowledge that allows us to help you build your vehicles the way you want. You just have to have that understanding that we are doing something that most of you won't try to do or don't know how to do, and we're going to face those issues. So a shop will properly address those as those situations come up. So that's why communication is key and having an understanding. So we do try to talk through customers with this when miles are brought up or vehicle year is brought up, and we do refuse customers because of it. And it's purely to, like I said, try to preserve the relationship. We get it all the time. We have people reach out to us all the time, and it's just have that understanding and really kind of break down what's going on with that vehicle. I mean, cars bone stock, once they get years and miles on them, you need maintenance items done, right? So as being a performance shop, we're increasing performance. Just got to be ready for that type of stuff. You know what I mean? And just have an understanding. So, it's one of those that as you start to manipulate, as you start to tune, as you start to put the power down, things might show their face that weren't there before. Even a couple 100 miles down the road, when you double the horsepower, the amount of torque introduced into rubber bushings, wiring harnesses, and everything as it twists the engine, you're going to start to notice things, and it's maintenance. There is a ton of maintenance that goes into horsepower. It doesn't matter how much money you spend. The maintenance goes up with the horsepower, okay? Oil changes should be done sooner. Injectors should be cleaned more. So these are things you do have to consider as the horsepower goes up, okay? So
it's not something where you just pick up 200 horsepower and then just drive it and do an oil change every 5,000. You have to be a lot more mindful and a lot more detailed with the maintenance that you do to keep the vehicle performing at its the top level it can be.
Right. And Tulo can speak to it. He has how many miles are on the Magnum?
The Magnum just hit 155.
155?
And it's a complete pile. And the 300, it just hit 30 and is a complete pile because it wasn't driven.
Right.
So the only thing is, the Magnum was previously modified. So every time I go in to do something, I have to undo something first. So my fuel system, someone did something with the wiring. I've probably installed, back when I was a tech, I probably installed about 20 different fuel systems here. Never had an issue. My car, the level sender will not work. The wiring has been modified. I don't really have the time or patience to go through it, so I just go off the odometer. But there are things like that you don't think about when buying a previously modified vehicle. So if you lived in an emission zone or something, that gas gauge not working, now your car doesn't pass. So there are things, all my wiring. All my wiring. When I bought the car, it had previously had long tube headers, I believe, because the trans harness that comes down the right side was all melted together. So when I was driving the car home on the test drive, everything was just fine. I paid cash, I bought it. about 10 miles away from my house, it just went in second gear as a limp mode because it lost trans temp. And it just thought it was 350 degrees. It freaked out, put it in second gear. So they're just things like that that you don't expect when buying a vehicle. And it took me about 2 months to finally dial it down. I replaced, the conductor plate and all that. So that's something where if it was a vehicle brought here, that would be the same thing. Luckily, I do my work, so I can get it done a lot quicker. But if you were to bring your vehicle here for a dyno tune, and that occurred, now it pushes us back. You're upset because, it's just a dyno tune. Why is this happening? Old cars have issues. That's just how they go.
Right.
You don't expect to buy a computer that's 30 years old and it work brand new.
Right.
It won't.
And another reflection, you said your 300 is super low miles, right?
Yeah, my 300, I literally bought it with 22,000 miles. It was owned by old people. It was never driven. Every single suspension part makes noise. It is the loudest stock car I've ever been in because all the bushings, they're old, they're original, they're shot. So I did a whole front suspension replacement. Now it doesn't make noise. The rear end, which I haven't touched, which still has 30,000 miles, all original parts, it's making noise. So I bought a nice car because I thought it would be nice.
Right.
It's old, stuff gets worn out. That's the nature of the beast.
And then compounded, if you were to start to modify the 300, it's going to compound and amplify those. So from a shop standpoint, you call and say I have an 05 Magnum with 30,000 miles on it. Cool, low miles. Look at what that shop would be faced without the unknown. So,
and even with that being said, I was still fighting rust. I was still fighting rust.
Right.
Low miles doesn't mean it's not driven in the winter.
Right.
It was driven in the winter at some point. Nothing wanted to come apart.
Right. So that piggybacks, and this will take us into, like I said, there's going to be an announcement in regards to what Satera Tuning is going forward in regards to business practices and what's going on. So I know this might be upsetting for some people. But as of after today, what I told my team is I'm no longer going to be doing remote tuning, especially, I shouldn't say no longer, it's going to be very picky on who I will, and this is the reasons why. I generally have taken on everybody that needs remote tuning assistance. I pride myself in the care and the amount of effort that I put into dialing in the tunes. The problem I'm seeing lately, which goes hand in hand with this, is pre-modified vehicles. The amount of time I spend troubleshooting, diagnosing other tuners, other builds, it's just not fair. It's not fair to my team, it's not fair to me, it's not fair to my customers that have their vehicles here, allowing us to initiate their builds and continue their builds. It's coming from a place I have an expectation for myself and my team and the quality of service and time and matter that we can deliver it in. And when I'm dealing with, I'm not lying to you, I had 20 emails this morning of remote tunes. I'm still working through them as I have a car that's in-house on the dyno that were just supposed to be what we thought simple remote tunes. Turns out they have a bunch of mechanical issues.
Yep. Now
I turn into a mechanic via a computer. A couple of them I've been able to help, and it turns into they go back to a shop and the shop charges them several $1,000s to fix that, where me as a shop and my expertise is the one that found the problem, I get nothing for it. So we are going to instill, basically I'm going to review anybody that wants remote tuning and make the decision if it's worth it or not. And we're going to slowly start taking on the work of other shops. It's just sadly, as we see more and more of these vehicles being modified by people that shouldn't be modifying them, tuning that shouldn't be tuning them. People are getting upset with me because tuning's taking a long time when I'm sitting there trying to fix something else somebody else did. You guys see the parking lot, you see what we have going on here. I have a ton of support. Thank you to everybody for that continued support. And what we're going to do is really focus on being able to continue to deliver that quality here. Not trying to abandon everybody out there. It's just a fact of the matter from a business standpoint. We have to review, and I want to be able to deliver the quality of those tunes and the communication and time and matter. I'm not kidding you guys. I have 50 emails every day. You guys can do the math a little bit. Imagine if it takes me, 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes to respond to the emails, review the data logs and help troubleshoot a vehicle, and then it adds up into I have to tune the cars that are here. I have to assist my team. I have to run a business. So, and it's just not fair to us as a business to deliver that experience to people, and then they go somewhere else, and other places are actually benefiting from us assisting. It's just not right. So in preservation of it, You know, we just want to be able to preserve those that continue to support us. So it will be a case-by-case basis. It's going to be cut out quite a bit, and we're going to be rocking out a lot of the builds here and really focusing on bringing back what got us to where we are. So, you know, appreciate all the patience and support from everybody. I know being super busy is great, but being that I'm the sole tuner here, I'm only one person. Don't want anybody upset by that, and it's not an excuse. I work diligently to return communication to everybody in a timely manner. It's just having that understanding, guys. So, especially with the product development we have going on, you know, the things that we are bringing to the table, we're really going to be focusing on, you know, maintaining the under this roof quality of the products that we're going to be able to bring in. That's kind of where we're going with it, guys. You know, in my terms of service that everybody signs, it does state that if remote tuning turns into diagnostic, you know, I switch it over to my hourly rate because I'm turning into a remote mechanic, not a tuner. So
right.
Fairness is that's what's going to happen for remote tuning going forward. Tunes will still be, you know, supported, absolutely, for all my previous customers. I will continue doing that for anybody that is a customer, so don't worry. My existing remote customers, you still get the same lifetime support. Just have that mutual understanding that if it turns into more than just tuning, you know, you got to help support the business so we can keep going on. You know, the fact is we do have well over 50 cars on the property. It just shows you the amount of tremendous support that we have. So we're going to gear and keep that focus in-house. So thank you again, everybody. Now everybody's favorite, we'll go to the actual Q&A for could you, should you. So what do you got for me,
Make sure to ask some questions. Let's start out with a good one. HP70 trans tune. Could you, should you? Is it worth it? Some people out there say it doesn't affect it at all.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a should you, could you.
Absolutely, yes and yes.
Yeah. It's there's, you know, they come from the factory for what they are. Obviously, for increasing horsepower, you have to make the adjustments accordingly for longevity. We did what nobody thought was possible a few years ago. I think we're approaching like 4 or even 5 years ago, where people said the HP70 couldn't take power. Well, we were the first to run 9s with it, and a bunch of people started running 9s after it. So it can do it as long as miles are good and the maintenance was good up to date.
That's one of those high mileage things. If you have a HP70 with 170,000 miles, it's probably not going to make 700 wheel 660 torque. It's probably going to die much quicker just due to the age of it.
Right. So it's all things considered. That goes back to the mileage and the conditions of it before. You know what I mean? You know, 5 years ago, if you look at how long HP70s were out at that time, it was only a few years. So even the ones driven a lot were not, you know, abused to that extent. Now that we are approaching the 10-year mark of an HP70 being around, you know, miles, maintenance.
You know, you're starting to see these cars with 150 plus miles on them. So.
And you know, they say they're no maintenance trans or lifetime. That's not the case. You know what I mean? You can always do some fluid swap. But needless to say, a proper built HP70, I have more confidence in now with the experience and technology that has been uncovered by tuning them. So, you know, my general rule of thumb is, if you want to tip that 4 digits or anything under, a proper built HP70 will be able to get it there. And it's mainly the torque, so that's around 950 foot-pounds of torque. We can make live as long as you do proper maintenance on it. Anything over that, you're going to need a 90 or 95, depending on your application. It's just pure size. The HP70, 75s are much, much smaller, so you're going to want to get the bigger components that the 90-95 can bring to the table. But tuning, even on a bolt-on application, there is room and performance that can be had. So I haven't seen any negativities come from it. What else you got?
On a 2.4 blower, ATI 10% lower, 265 upper pulley. Is that going to be spinning it too fast? Is that the danger zone? Would you be uncomfortable?
Absolutely. So should you do a 265 upper with a 10% lower? Or could you? Yeah, you can. Now this is what's going to happen. One, if it's a unported built blower, so it's a stock 2.4, it's going to lock up a grenade. Hope that it locks up versus grenading, because if it grenades, you can put holes in your hood or even go down through the block, which has been done. That is too much RPM. Even and what you have to consider too is your application, street or strip, right? If you're a race car that's on a trailer going to the track and you're doing an 8-second quarter mile, you know, with proper ported and built blowers with HD race bearings, The most aggressive setup we run is our 266 upper and our 10% lower, purely for that. But when driving on the street, we don't like that. One, you also remember, people think of that peak number, driving around at 2,000 RPM, you're spinning that blower a lot faster than what it does at a stock level. So you want to bring those down because you're just pumping heat, right? And that's one of those things where in a heat soak condition, a 266 compared to a 274 like our pulley combination, you're just pumping hot air. So the gains and power are minimal. Now, cold engine off a trailer like that, you can see the gains, but man, by the end of that track pull, even with chillers on it, you're pumping some hot air through there. But yeah, if that blower doesn't have a proper HD rebuild on it, HD race bearings, it will break at some point. Luck of the draw, is it going to be a dyno pull, 2 dyno pulls a week? You don't know, but it's definitely going to happen. So generally, unported blowers for the 2.4 application, we stop at a 2.74 upper, 10 lower. Ported, we will go our 2.666 upper for racing purposes only.
That's the beauty of our clutch rings of hell upper, is for racing purposes only. You put a 266 with a grip tech coating, and drive it home. You take that ring off, take that belt off, put 286 310 in there.
Right.
Safe for the street. Drive it home.
Right.
So,
or use an adjustable idler that we make too.
You can do that as well.
Yeah. So that's it. The 2.7, since we're on it, I know people are going to ask. The 2.7s we actually stop at our 286 upper and 10% lower, and it requires it being built as well. They're way more sensitive to RPM than the 2.4s, which is why the 2.4s are capable of making the same power as the 2.7, because they're smaller and they can be spun more reliably. But the 2.7s, we stop at the 286. I've seen people with 2.74s on it, and it's a ticking time bomb, just like a 2.4. And again, that's a much bigger rotor that's going to let loose. So that's where we would like to keep it for those. So what else you got?
Should you lower trans temp thermostat?
Good one. A little bit lower, sure. Yeah. Could you? Yeah. You don't want to go too low. I've actually seen transmissions fail by trans temps being too low. Not too low, but too low. So it is important to get to operating temp. This is why too low thermostats on the engine side are negative as well, because these modern fuel-injected engines actually perform better when they're warm. Same thing with the transmission. So what's nice about dropping to like a 160 T-stat and the trans side is it helps get to that 160 quicker, and then after a pass, when it spikes to 190, 200, it will drop quicker. So that is a good option to go, especially roll racing or anybody that does type of bracket racing where you're going to have multiple races in a day, because the stock thermostat is real hard to get down because it's going to be flowing at 180, so you're really not going to be able to drop the temp any lower. So 160 is there. Optimal temps we like to see about 130, 140 hitting the staging lanes after burnout and stuff. You want to stay between the 140, 190 range and do your hit. Can it take a 190 to 100 degree hit? Yeah, I just wouldn't do it back to back several times. But that's kind of what we tell our customers in that sense. But you do not want to do a hit with 100 degree trans temps. Understand viscosity of the fluids that are in it are relying on being at operating temp. So cold fluid, much thicker, it's not going to achieve the line pressures as quickly or as high as what you need, and you burn transes up just as quickly as too hot of a trans, just for different reasons. So good question.
So good for stock trans, build trans, if you're in that application?
Yeah, it's fine either way. Like I said, 160 is the lowest I would go on it, just purely because you do want heat in it. So, but yeah.
What would we use in ours? Do we have plans to make our own kit, or do we just use some off the shelf? Or some people are asking in the comments.
What are you talking
about? Like a trans thermostat kit.
I'm not making it. No, we use the Mishimoto. Mishimoto has a trans T-stat that we've had no issues with. Flows well, so that's kind of our go-to for it. So we do install those, but yeah, we don't need to make a kit. Somebody else does it. We'll just use theirs. So.
Should you, for a race car, stick with a built 8-speed or go to a turbo 400?
Depends on the. I mean, the beautiful thing of these 8-speeds is you can get them to hold power. Our shop car had making, we didn't race it at 1500. I know we brag about that, but really. So we made, really, when we were racing it, about 1200 consistently with the 8-speed with no issues. Absolutely no issues. Now, with, again, technology and the research that's been there, we're seeing these 8-speeds outlast blowers and motors now. So it's a great application. And if there's any chance that vehicle is going to go onto the street, it's great to be able to have 8 gears and, still be able to drive, comfortably. Turbo 400s, they're the holy grail because they're cheaper to build, and the fact that they generally have an unlocked torque converter, you can get trans brakes for it, everything along those lines. That's the reason why you see them work the way that they do. So it's going to be more application specific. And the reality is we don't do the race car thing here. We like cars that you can race, but they're street car specific. That's why we love the relationship we have with Sipple. The fact he can build transmissions that handle 1,500 plus horsepower, and then still drive on the street like a stock transmission. A little foreign, naturally, it's a built trans, but the fact is you can daily drive on a Sipple trans with no issues, and then still go to the track and knock off 8-second, 7-second passes. And it just, again, depends on the overall application. But for our customer base, no, I'd rather throw a Sipple trans in and keep it street car and fun, so you can throw the family in or, drive to the track and not have to worry and go for it there. That's my vote. That's a personal opinion. So we have done some, Turbo 400 swaps and stuff like that. But again, I have never done like a track-specific Turbo 400 swap. So to each their own. I know the real fast guys up there, absolutely. Yeah, you go race car, big aluminum block and 76 mil twin turbos and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's what you got to do. But street strip type setup, stick with 8-speed.
Stock airboxes, even with like a drop-in filters.
Yep.
What are they good up to? Do they kind of suck, or are they pretty good?
They're designed to suck. So dad joke, sorry.
Yeah.
So factory airbox, we'll go like models. So 5.7 392s, generally around a basic level 4 package, headers, cam, even ported heads. We see the factory airbox do just fine. We make a ton of power, over 500 to the wheels. You can do a Hellcat swap one for a little bit more with a drop-in. The beautiful thing about a factory airbox is the heat soak. They keep it out. So naturally, if you get to a point where you need more than that, than what that box can hold, then yeah, you would have to swap out to an open air setup. Hellcats and kind of the Hellcat powered applications. Our level 1s have no problem in regards to outflowing what the airbox can when you throw a drop-in into it. We do see roughly once you get to about 100 and I'd say 180 over stock, depending the application, is when those factory airboxes start to show that they're restrictive, and it's more beneficial on those to get an open filter type intake because they have intercoolers on them. So that you don't have to worry as much about the initial air being super hot because it's going to be cooled either way. But the fact of the matter, I've on a Hellcat, I've made 820 to the wheels on a stock airbox with a drop-in, and we swapped it out to a LMI intake, and it gained absolutely no more horsepower. So, but if I were to go for a 900 plus one, it absolutely would free up some airflow there. So I'm actually thinking we had one that made close to 850 on a stock airbox even. He's gone 940s in the quarter. So, they flow very well. They're over-engineered for the capability. So, like I said, the heat soak resistance is great. So, very good option for a majority of people out there. But when you exceed it, you got to do what you got to do. So, point of these machines too is we're hoping within the next couple of months we're going to have an intake line as well. So, we're going to do like starter kits where you get a catch can and a high-flowing intake. With heat soak resistance for about $500 give or take. So it's part of the R&D stuff that we're doing. You saw the 3D printed intake manifold. So these are all things that we're working to develop and bring to the industry. So what else?
What about the TRX intake? How are those?
TRX is great. We actually put a gauge on it that reads. It's kind of like a map sensor. Pre-filter, post-filters. Because we have the map sensors on it. So we utilize that. Again, level 1 package. They flow well. Even upwards of that one over 200, 250 to the wheels with drop-ins, it flows very, very well. The biggest hold-up on that one is the fact that it 180s real quick, and that's something that just, because of what the concept is being a Baja-style truck, it's going to be there. That's why you don't see so much gains from the big open ones on it because there's that violent turn that's right there.
Right.
So they flow very, very well. I've seen a lot of the S&B swaps from the factory airbox with no gains. It's super high horsepower setup. So factory airbox flows very, very well on there. It's mainly a sound thing. They're dampened more because of how it's designed to keep stuff out. So keep stuff out means sound doesn't go out. So you don't hear it as much. That's where the aftermarkets kind of shine. But very good on the TRX platform.
Should you run a filter on your turbo setup, or is a turbo guard fine to drive on all the time?
So the turbos are very different than a blower, because turbos will keep spinning to the RPM that, to their limit to achieve the airflow that they're being commanded to flow. So generally what we see by an air filter is it will slow down spool, but it doesn't affect the top end power too much. It's more so it just creates more of a lag because the turbo has to work harder to suck the air in, but it will spin faster to achieve the desired boost level regardless. Turbo guards, you can run them. I can't tell you how many of my cars I just run with the turbo guard on it. So breaking down what's happening is the air filters are designed for the fine particle elements. So dust, sand, going through a construction site, you see the grit in the air. The little pollen in the air. Over time, as those go into your intake system and they mix into the combustion chamber, stuff will get burnt off, but with gas and oil vapors and stuff that are there, it basically starts to adhere to things, and then it can turn into like a fine sandpaper. So it can wear the rings out a little quicker, cylinder walls, create scoring and stuff like that. So it's one of those. You break down the engine life. Would a engine last 100,000 miles running on turbo guards? Probably not, but it's really kind of hard to determine. Obviously, you don't want big things getting sucked in, but that's what you're doing, is you're allowing those items in. So you have to consider prior to combustion happening, what are those particles doing to the hard parts, whether it's pollen, dust, dirt, a fly that got chopped up by a turbo, and pieces of that are going around. That's what you are going to risk allowing to get into it. So I've put tens of thousands of miles on I had a 2010 Camaro that was rear mount twin turbo. Had it for 4 years, and I ran basically makeshift turbo guards on it before turbo guards were a thing. I went like 4 years on it, 30,000 miles, and I rebuilt the motor, and it looked fine. You wouldn't have no idea. Now my turbos were coated in rubber because it was right behind the wheel doing burnouts at the track and stuff, but it didn't skip a beat, and I had no evidence inside the combustion chamber in any way. Not saying it's optimal, but real daily driver, yes, for optimum reliability, run a filter on it and just buy turbo guards or a velocity stack or whatever when you go to race. But you just, that's the long-term risk you take. Very, very rarely have I seen it. I mean, never actually. I've seen like a premature failure, and it's because there's no filter on it. But it will reduce the longevity of the components, absolutely.
I ran, when I first did the supercharger on the Magnum, I didn't have room or time or energy to make a proper intake, so I ran open throttle body for about...
Did that a long time?
Yeah, probably like 10,000 miles, longer than I should have. Yes. My throttle body was extremely dirty. Everything past it was very dusty. You could see that stuff was getting in, so I decided to make an intake, but you do notice that there is...
It's going to suck stuff in, naturally. It's the way it is. So, like I said, longevity-wise, it does affect it. So, one more, and then we'll wrap it up. It's
turbo piping, sizing from the header down to the turbos. If you have like mid-mounts, like Helions, or you're making your own or something, how important is that? Do you want as big as you can get, or is too big too bad?
Too big is too bad. So great question, and this is jumping into turbodynamics, and I can go on to the real technical side of things. The best way to visualize it for people when I have the conversation is think about fluids. It's much easier than think about air, but fluid and air do respond very similar in regards to when you introduce velocity to them. So these turbos from the manufacturers have a designed inlet, outlet, so on and so forth. Optimally, you want to match it. Okay. Now, some will think, if you have a nice, for example, if the inlet on the turbo for the turbine housing is 2 inches. Okay, we'll just use a number. And your exhaust going into it is going to be 3 inches. They think running a 3-inch up to that 2 inch is better because you're going to get more airflow. The fact is you're going to create turbulence, right? So at any point when you downsize it, depending how you do the transition, if you have a smooth transition, it could help with velocity. But most transitions are very, 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 very tight. You're going to create turbulence, and you're going to run in, it actually could affect spool. Also, too big. If you have a 3-inch going all the way up to right to the turbo, or goes down to 2, same thing. You're slowing down the velocity of what's getting to it, and then it's going to have to reduce down before it goes into the turbine housing. So it's very important, and we do a lot of measurements and calculations in regards to when we build our turbo kits. One measurement a lot of people don't do that is very important is the actual back pressure ratio after a turbo is built. You know, it's optimal to stay as close to 1 as you can. Not really going to happen on most applications, but you know, that will tell you if you don't have enough airflow going to it or you have the wrong turbo size. Same thing on the charge pipe side. Again, if you have a 4-inch charge pipe but your throttle body is 3 inches, you know, there's a point where it's going to have to transition down, and all of a sudden you're going to start to change it unless it's a very gradual transition. Testing shows that a larger pipe, what it will do is reduce the intake air temps because the compressed air is not being compressed as much to flow. But again, optimal, you want a throttle body and inlet into the intake to match what the turbo is for optimum velocity. So, you know, that's why, you know, for example, on a helium kit with a 3-inch pipe going right into a throttle body that's a little bit bigger, that's fine. If you make the pipe a little bit bigger, it's fine, but you know, it's one of those, you don't want the pipe to be bigger than the actual inlet into the intake manifold, because at the end of the day the runners are even much smaller. So you want to maximize velocity without back pressure being an issue, because too much back pressure will kill velocity as well. So it is very, very important, as well as back pressure, just like we talked about last week with the Demon 170, how we lost about 1.5 pounds of boost just by dropping the cat back, but power output didn't change. So that also helps the turbo in regards to battling, because at the end of the day, it's a measurement of restriction. So the more efficient, easier breathing it is, the better. But too big can be bad, just like turbo size. You don't want, you know, on twin 76 mil turbo setup if you're trying to make 1,000 wheel, because honestly, a single 76 is more than enough. So you're just slowing down the velocity like crazy. So yeah, it's very, very important to dive into it, and that's what, you know, a proper turbo system is designed for. Can it be wrong and you throw it on and still make more power? Absolutely. It's better, you know, a turbo on it is better than no turbo on it.
Yep.
But if you want a truly optimized and efficient setup, it is important.
Gotcha. So
all right.
There's just pressure.
Yeah, it's all pressure,
So
all restriction. So, all right, guys, thanks for checking in again. We'll be back next week. Get those questions coming.
Yes,
We'll see you. Thank you.